All right, Maz. I was just thinking about how. Oh, are we live yet? I was just thinking about how after Trump lost the 2020 election, but continued to contest it, we did some reporting at the time that there was major pressure between the time of November of 2020 until he left office in January to bomb Iran, and we wrote about it because the sourcing was strong and like the pressure was real. But I remember even at the time thinking like, he's not really going to do this. Like, I understand that like he's telling people he might do it and he's under a lot of pressure to do it, but he's not really going to do it. And it turned out that because he's invested all of his energy in trying to overturn the 2020 election, organizing January 6th and all that, that he never ended up bombing Iran. 4 years later, he's back in office running the entire time as the anti-war president. Invasion of Russia wouldn't have happened without him. October 7th wouldn't have happened without him. He was against, oh, hey, it's George. He was against the Iraq war, which wasn't true. He claims he was against the Iraq war. And so here we are in the first few months of the second Trump term, and we have a bombing campaign. What do we know so far about what the U.S. has done to Iran?
Yeah, so just an hour or so ago, there was this Truth Social post, obviously by Trump. I can bring it up here and show people who have not seen it, where Trump basically said that he's bombed 3 Iranian nuclear sites which had been on the hit list, so to speak, for Trump for some time. Or not just Trump, but the U.S. in general. People knew that these were the sites that they wanted to take out. And effectively, he said he bombed them. He said he hit them with multiple bombs. He capitalized the word bombs in his Truth Social post. And then from that point, we haven't really had tremendous information. It's nighttime in Iran right now. It's about 4:30 a.m. as of the time of this recording. The internet is intermittent there. There have been some initial Iranian reactions, but we don't have yet satellite images. We don't have what you can call a battle damage assessment of what happened per se. But he said he hit them. And, it really depends what happens next in a way. You could say that it could be the first salvo in a much larger Iranian-American war. It could be, a one-off. It could be what you can call a choreographed move that was made with some sort of communication with the Iranians. We don't actually know any of these questions at the moment, or the answer to these questions at the moment. Let me just bring up share screen. Yeah, here's some of the information. You can see there. He says that Israel is much safer now. He communicated he hit the facilities at Fordo, Natanz, Isfahan, and Fordo is the major site, the most important deeply buried site. So, he said they've completed it, and he said now is the time for peace, which I think is very interesting because he's kind of saying, well, that's all, folks. Nothing more to see here. He's not signaling, at least right now, that this is the first stage in a broader campaign at regime change inside Iran. It seems like he'd like to escalate to de-escalate, as they say, judging by his statement at the moment. And from the Iranian side, there's also been some reaction, very limited again, I think partly because of what time it is over there and some of the communication and jamming that I mentioned a bit earlier. But, on Iranian television, on Meher News, which is like a more hardline Iranian news channel, there was this gentleman who came on, a government official, and he said effectively that, if these sites were hit, we evacuated them already before. It's not really something we're surprised by. And I'm trying to share right now another screen. Let me just see if it comes up here. So I'm getting better at streaming. I'm not the first natural streamer, but I'm getting better now. Hopefully this works. So that's not it. This was a statement from an Iraqi militia, but I'm trying to share what I have as well too. Oh, Ryan, are you muted? I don't think we can hear you. Yeah, you're muted.
All right, go ahead. You're cruising on the stream. Go for it.
Yeah. Well, here it is. Here's a post from a very senior national security figure, advisor to the parliament in Iran. And what he's saying effectively, and I can even translate it so people can read it themselves. One second. Yeah. He's saying that from Iran's perspective, nothing too strange has happened. Iran's been waiting for attack on Fordo for several nights. The site has long been evacuated and has not suffered any irreversible damage in the attack. Two things are certain. First, knowledge cannot be bombed. And second, the gambler will lose this time. So, you know, I'll tell you, I've been watching this subject for many, many years. I think for over 10 years, I've been paying attention to the Iranian standoff over the Iranian nuclear program. And I'll tell you, in the last 6 months, the Iranian officials, including the current president, Pezeshkian, they've been talking about these sites being bombed. It's not really surprising to anyone that they were bombed in a way. I'm sure that they would like to avoid that. But it doesn't strike me as beyond the realm of possibility that they would have taken every precaution they can beforehand to take what they can out of these sites, especially Fordo, in anticipation of the fact that they would be subject for a major US military assault, which destroyed them or heavily damaged them at least. Right now, we don't know how much destruction took place, how successful the attack was. There were some reports, conflicting reports shift very quickly at the moment, so we don't really know for sure, but there were some reports they may have attacked the entrances. It's not clear which bombs were used yet. If they were what are called massive ordnance penetrators, 30,000 pound bombs, they could destroy it. We don't really know. They haven't really been used in combat per se. And to do this, actually, you wouldn't just be able to drop it on Fordo. You'd have to effectively hit the same spot again and again and again and again, and kind of use the bombs to dig it up. That's the theory behind destroying it in this sense. So again, we don't know this, but it doesn't strike me as beyond the realm of possibility that in fact, I would very much believe that they did take whatever precaution they could beforehand to move enriched uranium and other equipment out of the sites beforehand. As I mentioned, the Iranian president, Pezeshkian, has been talking about these sites being destroyed for quite a long time and saying we'll build them again. Just before the war started, one day before, they said that the Iranians announced that they'd opened a new enrichment facility, which they said is no one knows where it is and it's indestructible and no one can find it and we'll be enriching there if push comes to shove. So I think they planned for this in some sense. And it just depends what communications have happened on the two sides now. Had they telegraphed this beforehand and said, if we're going to do a one off, you don't hit us back, we'll leave, maybe that would be the end of it. Maybe they didn't do that. Maybe they said, you attack us, we're going to do a similar strike against you, a choreographed sort of display that they did at the time that Qasem Soleimani was killed. That's also possible, just to show that they can hit back. Again, this is a fast developing situation. I'm not sure, but I don't find it particularly shocking. Actually, just not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying that
Yeah.
it's not everyone expected it in some way, or it saw it as a very plausible scenario that took place in this conflict.
I'm curious for your take on the spin that was coming out of senior Iranian officials this afternoon. They were saying, and I think there's Dropsite had shared this. You might have flagged some of this. There were some officials who were saying, look, the fact that they are weighing the costs and benefits and then planning to go in and bomb Fordo and then call it a wrap, like move on, is actually beneficial to Iran. It shows that the U.S. doesn't actually want this smoke, that the U.S. actually doesn't want to like get involved in a day-to-day way, that Trump wants his thing, and then he's going to say, I want peace, and I'm going to move on. Is that just cope from the Iranians, or do you think that there's something to that like this, okay, we bombed Fordo. This is the thing that they've been demanding, or that Israel's been demanding that we do for them for decades. Now we've done it. Now we can wash our hands and like, that's it.
That's certainly the tenor you get from Trump's initial statement about it. And there were also reports, I'm trying to bring them up as well too. Again, it's developing very quickly. But there are reports that the US, I'll share this actually with you guys too. The US actually contacted the Iranians after the strike and said, that's the end of it, if you want. Let me know if you see
So
the
it's like,
screen right
in other
now.
words, don't bomb our base in Qatar. Don't bomb our troops in Iran. Don't unleash your militias. Leave us alone.
Yeah.
We won't hit
I'll
you
read.
again.
I'll read the relevant section. So, a source familiar with the operation and a senior Defense Department official confirmed that the MOP was used in the strikes, with two MOPs used per target. That's about 60,000 pounds of bombs. The U.S., or sorry, on each target. The U.S. reached out to Iran diplomatically Saturday to say the strikes are all the U.S. plans and that regime change efforts are not planned, the sources said. Earlier this week, multiple U.S. officials told CBS News that Mr. Trump opposed the plan to kill Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader. So again, with the caveat that obviously there's tremendous amount of intentional deception taking place, and everything really leading up to the strike. In fact, about the 2 weeks and all these other things that people may be familiar with, the Trump timeframe for a decision, it was obviously just if not intended to be deceptive, it certainly was not intended to be taken literally. But I do think that there's a mutual interest in Iran and the U.S. to avoid a long, drawn-out conflict with one another. That's quite legitimate and genuine. Not to say that they like each other or they're happy with their
Right.
sites being bombed or anything like that, but they don't want to end up in a very long war with America because it's very different from being in a long war with Israel. And the U.S., for its own part, Trump does not want to be involved in a very, very long war with Iran. Doesn't want to be. Uh, he doesn't ideologically necessarily want one, but also he's kind of being bullied into this right now. He's kind of was cornered into this current conflict. It's a little, it's kind of
It's kind of
sad if
funny
you
to
just
think of the American president to be bullied into something, but yeah.
Who's the real alpha in this relationship between Benjamin Netanyahu and Donald Trump? It's kind of clear who's
It is
calling the
clear.
shots in the situation.
Yeah.
It's who has the. I will say something about this whole situation. It's a very revealing episode because it shows you when Trump or anyone they have a certain they're just somehow lukewarm in their beliefs. He has a
Mhm.
general sense of what he wants. He clearly doesn't really know how to achieve it in all cases. It's more like a vibe. He couldn't end the Ukraine-Russia war. A lot of things that he said he was come out the gate and immediately do. He found that reality was a bit different, and then he started wavering a bit. Benjamin Netanyahu has been focused on this one subject for at least 30 years,
Yeah.
militantly focused, writing books about it, almost only talking about this entire time. He is fanatically committed to achieving this. If you put someone who's dithering and unsure with someone who absolutely knows what they want, is committed, and has built networks for their entire lifetime to accomplish it, uh, probably the person who's committed is going to get what they want. And I think
Yeah.
that's most likely not to excuse Trump by any means. It's still his call, and after he's taking credit for it. But the thing is, I think that if there was internal debate, it was clearly what way it was going to be settled based on who's more motivated.
Now, what about the question of deterrence? So, if Iran receives Trump's message, to oh, okay, you've dropped 120,000 pounds of bombs on a couple of sites, and you say that you're done. Everything else you've said is a lie, but you say you're done now. You say you're not going to do regime change. Okay, we're going to wrap this up. We're going to move on. Does that normalize for Iran the idea that they can just be bombed at will at any time in the future?
This whole thing, I believe what Netanyahu was aiming at, and the whole point of this bombing campaign of Iran right now, is to do precisely that. If you remember in the 1990s in Iraq, before the actual invasion of Iraq in 2003, yeah, there was regular bombings of Iraq
Mhm.
by the U.S. and other international parties in alliance with the U.S. What this did was it normalized the idea that Iraqi sovereignty is not something very serious. It started gradually eroding uh, the country's control over its territory. They put a no-fly zone over one part of the country at one point, just put it totally off the table. They degraded the state, they degraded its authority, and they made it normal, as you said, to bomb it. And then, so as the state got weaker and weaker, one day, years down the line, the opportunity arose to kind of knock it over. And people were like, "Well, we've degraded the sovereignty so much. Is it really that big a deal if we just kick it over now?" I think that's what Netanyahu wants. And
Right.
the
They did that.
U.S.
They did that in Syria, and you know, some guys on
Ser-
motorbikes knocked it over.
Syria's sovereignty was like
Yeah.
nil, not just from the U.S. but from Turkey and Russia and
Right.
Iran and all these other parties kind of got involved. And Iran is not at that point yet. but I think they'd like to start that process where they can
Mhm.
just kind of weaken it until the point they can knock it over. Now, and what happens now also depends very much on the moves of political elites inside Iran, how they decide to navigate this. And the Iranians, they're not without cards to play, actually. And it's interesting. Some people may welcome this turn of events for this reason that, okay, you destroyed these nuclear sites, which are very well monitored, very well known, or were very well monitored, were known to the international community. The Iranians have already said that they are going to make other sites, or they've made other sites even they're going to set up
Mhm.
at. They could withdraw from these monitoring agreements. They clearly have gotten them nothing. They've haven't protected the country's sovereignty. They haven't allowed them to have a civilian nuclear program, which they are entitled to legally under the treaties that they've adhered to. So they may decide to just make a political decision to develop a nuclear weapon now, and they may have taken out, as they said that they have, the reality of it, but they say they moved enriched uranium and other things out of the sites already. They could have the ability to dash to a bomb outside of monitoring, and you don't need a huge site in some cases. You can do this somewhere else in the country. I think the issue partly is the intelligence penetration of
Mhm.
Iran by Mossad, but that's not an insurmountable obstacle per se either. They may, and many people are saying this actually inside Iran, that decide that whatever the cost, and there could be very very great costs to it, our sovereignty in our country actually will not survive without a nuclear weapon at this point. There's a famous quote by Zulfikar Ali Bhutto, who was the former prime minister of Pakistan. He said that we need to get a nuclear bomb, even if we have to eat grass for
Hmm.
years and years, 100 years. And you know what? Pakistan did suffer a little bit, and he was hung actually by the Pakistani
Yes.
military. We don't know, not exactly over this per se, but it's kind of interesting coincidence. Uh, but they got a nuclear bomb, and I don't
Mhm.
think any country's ever got a nuclear bomb and has regretted it. In fact, I think a lot of them have regret not getting one.
Pakistan's probably pretty happy right now.
They've been elated for a very long time, and especially recently. North Korea had always feared exactly this scenario, this exact same style of bombing campaign happening against them, which cannot happen anymore. No one has the appetite for it anymore because of this. So I do believe that in the medium term, it's very likely that the Iranians may look to obtain a nuclear weapon. All the arguments against it have been, suffered serious blows, you could
Right.
say. Uh, the one impediment so far has been lack of political will, and that's actually been Ali Khamenei. He's been against it for ideological reasons. Basically, his reasoning is it's against their values. It's against the religious values of Iranians to develop a nuclear weapon. That's kind of pissed a lot of people off who are in favor of a nuclear weapon. But that's what he's been saying. There's a fatwa, a religious edict against it.
Right.
But that may not be the case in the future. He's also 86 years old,
Right.
and
And he
his
also organized the council, that 88 person council, to put together his successor today, as Israel has talked about assassinating him.
That's
So it
correct. Yeah,
might
yeah.
not be up to him. There's this sense that you take out Khomeini, all of a sudden you have a failed state and civil war. But what he's signaling through that is like, no, there will be succession, and this faction that's in control now will remain in control. I got to go put my kids to bed. So I got to wrap this up for now. If you want to hang out live with people, you're welcome to. But we've got Trump in about a half an hour.
You should
Maybe we,
go. I gotta write something about this too. So
that's
hopefully we
true.
can
Yeah,
we can
you've got edits to handle.
yeah. So hopefully we can
Yep.
continue this conversation with everybody on the site. Thank you for chatting, Ryan, and we can
Yeah. Thank you, and thanks everybody for jumping on this
uh,
dispatch from World War III.
all right, see you guys.